Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the 13th edition of the Future Forward Innovations for Youth Employment live online panel discussion, which is being hosted by Ashoka and MasterCard, thanks to our Google Plus Hangout. Today's panel is going to be exploring the future of work, and specifically opportunities in wellness in Africa. So I'd like to welcome everyone from all over the world who've joined us today. You're in for a very special treat. My name is Joe Agoda. I am a member of the Ashoka Changemakers Network, and I will be moderating today's conversation. I have formerly worked in Africa for about 4 years, first at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and then for the United Nations. I'm really actually excited to be hosting today because I have another announcement to make, which we'll share more information about, which are 2 Ashoka courses, which are on these topics of both innovation for health and wellness and also innovations for youth employment in Africa. So we'll be tweeting out about those courses. Today is actually the first day we're announcing these 2 courses, and people have the ability to sign up and apply. It's an application course, and so you should be getting more information out via our Twitter stream, and we hope that you'll be able to apply. So for those of you who might be joining this webinar for the first time over the last few months, the Future Forward initiative, which has been brought to you by Ashoka and MasterCard, has explored a number of different issues about youth employment in Africa, also showcasing different kinds of innovations, opportunities, challenges, and exploring change-making in the 21st century in Africa and what that means for the work environment, especially for young people. So if you want to learn more about this ongoing Future Forward initiative, we join you to catch up with past conversations. All past webinars are available online by going to changemakers.com/futureforward. So now to get a little bit more into today's conversation. The workplace of the 21st century, we know this is a dynamic issue. Things are changing. Globalization, advances in technology, large youth population, all these things are presenting, again, both challenges and opportunities for the future of work in Africa around health and wellness. And so today what we've done is we've brought together a diverse panel to speak to this issue. We have Cameroon, Kenya, and South Africa, and we're going to have these panelists introduce themselves in just a moment. And they're all coming together to discuss this issue about the future of work and the opportunities of wellness and health in Africa. So just as a final note before I begin to introduce our really amazing panel, you can join the conversation today on Twitter by using the hashtag AfricaYouthForward. So we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, you can tweet them at us, and I will try to bring them to the panel. On that note, we hope you'll join the conversation, and I'm going to get us started today with our panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves one by one, and then we'll get into some particular questions for them. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Dr. Andrew Ross. Dr. Andrew Ross, please would you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about your work.
My name is Andrew Ross. I work at the medical school in South Africa, in Durban, South Africa. I'm involved in the family medicine department, involved in training undergraduate and postgraduate students. I'm involved in a project, though, that supports rural students to train to be healthcare professionals, really with the emphasis of trying to provide staffing at rural hospitals to meet the healthcare needs of a large rural population.
Great, thank you so much. Now let's keep going on. Up next, due to their internet speed, it's a little bit slow, so we've asked them to turn off their video, but we have 2 leaders. We have Catherine Najiri and Paige Ellison. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
My name's Paige Ellison. I'm the founder of Africa Yoga Project. Africa Yoga Project exists to catalyze the well-being industry and the yoga industry in Africa and train youth to be leaders in that industry.
From Nairobi, Kenya, with Africa Yoga Project, and I am the director of teacher. My main job at Africa Yoga Project is I'm in charge of all the teachers kind of report to me with all the work, all the youth that are hired by Africa Yoga Project report me with all the work they're doing with their communities that is teaching yoga.
Excellent. Thank you, Catherine and Paige. Up next, we have Dr. Mocha Lantum.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I am calling from or joining you from Nairobi. I'm the managing partner for Microclinic Technologies. We're a technology company that's headquartered in Nairobi, and we develop software for clinics and hospitals. And part of our innovation is both on the innovation in technology side, but also in terms of our business model, which I think is quite transformational, with the very focused intent on creating employment opportunities down the last mile, and looking at the population of unemployed youth, who many of whom are highly educated, as a talent pool for us to scale our technology and have more impact in the healthcare sector. So I'm definitely glad to join here today, and looking forward to learn from my colleagues on the panel, as well as from the questions and comments that come through this through the webinar. Thank you.
Excellent. And now, just to round out our panel, we have our resident young person, Alan Ntefe.
Yeah. So hello, I'm Alan Teff. I'm from Cameroon actually, but I'm on transit to Gabon. So I'm the co-founder and the executive director at Gifted Mom, which is a social enterprise that is trying to create a world free of maternal and infant mortality using last mile technologies. So we're dealing in global health in a humanitarian field, but also we have an innovative business model to actually be sustainable, scale our activities across the continent, and create a lot of jobs across the continent. So it's a pleasure to be part of the seminar, and hoping to learn a lot from this, and also to share a lot of insights.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan. So just to recap, we have a very diverse panel. We're going to have someone who's going to be able to give us kind of that medical academic perspective. We have someone who's working in alternative health and yoga. We have someone who's innovating on a business model, supply chain almost level. And we also have a young person who's leading and starting up their own health and wellness organizations. So we have a great spread of folks that, again, please tweet us, ask questions. I have a few, but we want to hear from you all around the world, what you'd like to learn, what questions you have for our panel. I am going to kick things off, though, with a question for the entire panel, which is, we know that with globalization, with the advance of technology, things are so dynamic right now in the employment space, especially in health and wellness with all that's going on. So what I'd like to ask each panel member to do is through their work, if they could talk about one challenge that they're seeing in this health and wellness in Africa work area, and one opportunity. So again, one challenge and one opportunity. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with Dr. Andrew Ross, and we're going to go through the same order again. So please, Dr. Ross, start us off.
Right, one challenge. I had a few written down. I think the challenge for us was, how do we staff rural hospitals? And that it's a worldwide problem of being able to find people with appropriate skills who are willing to work in rural areas. And generally what happens is that you kind of import people into those places. And that the hospital I was working at, we had doctors from England for quite a long period of time. And so the opportunity was around, could we train local people? And often there's a feeling that the schools are so bad and that people won't make it, and even if a few people make it, they won't come back. And so we really created opportunities around putting out a challenge. Okay, we will fund you if you get a place, if you do some voluntary work, if you're prepared to come back on a year-for-year work-back contract. And we were amazed just at how young people came out of the woodwork, exceptional people who were able to cope with the demands of going to university. They were able to get a professional qualification, and then they have in fact, come back and make a contribution. We're not asking people to come back forever, but we're asking people to come back and make a contribution. And that them coming back helps others to think this is really possible. You know, going to the moon is something you might dream about. If you only see a white doctor from England working at the hospital, you kind of think, well, it's not possible. But if you see an African doctor who came from your own community, or an African physio or pharmacist or whatever, it becomes that much more realistic and kind of tangible. So I think that that's both a challenge and an opportunity.
Great. Let me recap that, because I think that's very interesting. You've almost presented how your challenge became the opportunity, and the challenge that you talked about is the skills gap. Something that we hear a lot about is also the kind of doctor-to-patient ratio, a huge issue in many areas of Africa, especially in the rural areas, where I know a number of people have gone to medical school in the city, and that's either they want to stay there or they want to go to Europe, they want to leave. So I think that's a really interesting challenge that you put forward to us, is the skills gap, but that's an opportunity. And the opportunity is, how do we get those folks into those positions? How do we give them opportunity to learn, get into the profession? And the last piece that I would just note that I think was interesting you said there is about a positive feedback loop of aspiration and inspiration. That as folks that are able, from these rural areas, are able to go through the process, return to their communities as medical professionals, that is allowing a positive feedback to even more people to join. So I think that's a really, you started us really strongly. Let's keep going now to Catherine and Paige. Again, Catherine and Paige, a challenge that you're seeing in your work and an opportunity.
So I'll start. My name's Paige, and again, the co-founder of Africa Yoga Project and executive director. I would say my challenge and my opportunity are pretty similar. The opportunity is that there's a $27 billion yoga industry in America. And in most countries and continents, besides Africa, yoga and well-being and has really become quite an opportunity, both for people's well-being and also for livelihoods and business. We have an emerging demand here with no local trainings. I just got an email 5 minutes ago with someone asking, do you know a Pilates teacher that's Kenyan, or a bar teacher? I'm opening a new studio. And when I said no, but why don't we train a Kenyan to learn how to teach those disciplines, she said, oh no, I'll just go overseas and get someone from overseas. And I think our biggest challenge is the lack of investment that we have in our local population to fill the jobs that we have in our local population.
And then, Catherine, what would you see as that was Paige, the opportunity there? Or if Catherine wants to take this one. So you've talked about the challenge, which is that yoga is a growing industry. I would say in Africa, my experience has been that alternative medicine is something people are open to. So you're saying that there's this kind of, again, not even a skills gap, but the jobs are open, but they're not, it's a kind of an attitude challenge of who should fill these jobs. So I'm wondering if you speak from your organization, and again, I'll give this to Catherine, about how do you see that, or what do you see as the opportunity in that 27 billion kind of people who are $27 billion industry, and bringing it to Africa? Maybe you could speak to that opportunity.
The opportunity, there's a big opportunity for the market here in Kenya, because there's as in Kenya, as far as I know, it's just Africa Yoga Project that it's training yoga teachers who are Kenyan to teach yoga, and then there's a huge demand of local teachers teaching yoga around Nairobi. So like currently I'm teaching at the UN gym, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for the youth to get to teach yoga and earn a living by just being on the wellness industry. There's a huge demand of yoga and fitness in Nairobi.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Catherine. So again, we're talking about the opportunity, which is, I would connect it back to Dr. Russ was talking about, is that these are positions that need to be filled, that there's this demand for service, for health as service, and that we just need to get folks kind of up and educated and skills trained, because those jobs are there, and that's the opportunity for young people. So that's an interesting connection. So let's keep going down the panel to Dr. Mokalantam. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing?
Sure, thank you. being the head of an IT company, I look at it from I see a great paradox, if you will. The first paradox being that we are at a point in time where if you talk to many companies, they are looking at wellness within the context of millennials and saying, wow, the millennials are well off, in the sense that the workplace for lots of millennials is the iHub locations, the M Labs, the and then even in places like Google and Yahoo, you have games at work, you have a restaurant at work, you have a washing machine at work. Those are things which our grandfathers, our forefathers never experienced in the workplace. And so one would say that there is a certain, at least in the IT sector, a certain expectation that the millennials should be entertained and kept in order to keep them focused and engaged at work, and that's also a way to retain them, compared to just your basic stock options, which was sort of what happened in the past. Now that's one scenario. On the flip side, you look at a market where the youth are chronically unemployed, and I think the contrasting image is the number of youth that you see on CNN trying to cross the Straits of Gibraltar into Europe and the Mediterranean, and you basically say there is either a gross sense of insanity or insanity, excuse me, or the uncertainty is so overwhelming that they are willing to risk it all. And so in between that, hopefully there's opportunity. But we must, I'd say, in the spirit of Ashoka as change makers, we have to think about things fundamentally differently in my mind. And I believe that the wellness opportunities would be perceived first and foremost from a mental perspective. The level of uncertainty in the job market is so overwhelming. Why? Because if you look at the job applications on average that youth are presented with, all applications are asking for 10-year experience. Everything that you see, 10-year experience, 5-year experience, that's basically saying that the only valuable employee these days is one who has been there and done that, and not creating a lot of opportunity for entry-level folks. Despite, and I think one would say that if there is unemployment, that means there should be cheap labor. But the fact that wages are increasing and unemployment is rising, that means we have to fundamentally rethink how the industries are being built and jobs are being created. I would say that from a challenge perspective, there is uncertainty. From the opportunity perspective, we have to rethink business models. And so the opportunity for technology to drive the opportunity I described for a business model, I think is better than ever before, because work could just be as simple as having a cell phone or having a laptop. Now we need to figure out a way to incentivize the youth to be able to create job opportunities for themselves, as opposed to wait to be employed in an industry where you need a 10-year experience as the as sort of the entry point. And so I see that we need to work and create an ecosystem whereby youth can provide value based on their access to technology down the last mile. Let's say providing automation of services in matatus, automation of services like doing health promotion awareness in their villages, creating transportation systems for mothers who are unable to get to hospitals, serving as health companions in the hospitals. So there's a lot of opportunity there. They just need to really think outside the box. And I think mobile payment, which makes it easy for currency to exchange hands, would also be able to create a lot of opportunities for self-employment down the in the Africa market.
Well, Dr. Moku, you've given us a lot to chew on there, so I'm going to recap a little bit of it. You started us with the challenge, which I think you referred to as the environment currently, the uncertainty of the markets. If we look at the migration issues, which is North Africa to Europe, that there's uncertainty in the markets, even though there are opportunities, the market is uncertain. And the other challenge I think you talked about are something that links to what we've talked about so far, which are obstacles to getting started, which is that when you're looking for a job and everything that you look for says 5, 10 years of experience, well, how do you get there? So I think that's a thread that I would pull from our first two panelists, which is the need for education and skills training to get people, and somehow getting also the employers to have an attitude change. I mean, I think this is one of the opportunities you spoke to, which is if we can change the attitude of some of the hiring forces of looking at some of these skills training programs and getting new people into the workforce. I always say that diversity happens at the intersection of different cultures and backgrounds. So I think that's an important point that we want to bring in, find a way, an opportunity to have an attitude change and look to change hiring practices. The other opportunity which you really spoke to was technology. I think I'd like to revisit that with the other panelists later. It's something that I've seen a lot in the health industry, especially with mHealth, with new devices, with connectivity being such that almost everywhere you go, at least that I've been to in Africa, and this was a few years ago, connection was actually better than we have here in New York City where I'm stationed. So I think that is definitely an opportunity with the amount of connectivity. You can be in the middle of a rural area but still have access to all the information. I think that's a huge area for opportunity. So Dr. Morgan, I'm going to return to that technology question in a little bit, but I'm going to keep going to our last but not least member of the panel, our young aspiring social entrepreneur. Alan, can you talk to us about the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing in your work?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So, so we work in. We are trying to implement mHealth solutions in rural areas, and I learned something from Dr. Moka last February, and that was that community workers was a huge opportunity for employment, but it seemed as if the advantage was not very much used. And working in rural rural areas and in global health, I've noticed that one of the challenge that is being faced is actually the motivation of community workers. It's a huge challenge, especially where I work. And I'm one of those youths that is coming from what Dr. Moka just said. Going back actually to see how we can solve problems, finding new ways of transporting pregnant women to the hospitals, finding new ways of getting them to do their antenatal cares. And when I got there, I noticed a challenge. And I think the opportunity here is actually for more people to come into the field of mHealth, of rural health, and actually find out innovative ways innovative ways in which they can engage actually community workers. I think it's a very, very huge field. It has so much potential, and it's for me that's it for now. And I wish to come back later to join the conversation with respect to innovations in technology and also in health.
All right, thanks. So I'm going to come back to you in a bit because I want to hear more about your venture and what you've learned growing it. But we've talked about the challenge that Alan's before is motivation. I would think that may be tied to what we've talked about before, is that if the opportunities, you feel like you can't reach and get to these opportunities, even if you get skilled, even if you get trained, this kind of motivation can be a very tough one. If there's no light at the end of the tunnel, I've seen any community-led project, there has to be that positive feedback loop. If I work hard, if I get educated, if I get skilled, then there's going to be a reward for me. And I think that's an interesting and a really valid point about a challenge of making sure that motivation is there and that light at the end of the tunnel, the opportunity can be connected to it. And in terms of that opportunity, you spoke to technology, so I guess that's something we should come back to maybe in the second half of our panel discussion about ways that we're seeing technology both I think giving opportunity, but I mean, at least from my side, in Europe and the U.S., we've seen the challenge of technology being an automation problem. That some of the tasks are very repetitive, say like a bank teller or something that's very repetitive job is being taken over by technology. I think we're seeing the self-driving cars coming. So what will happen to all the taxi drivers? So I think it's an interesting two-sided, technology being an opportunity and also being a challenge. But what I'd like to actually start to continue the conversation, I'm going to come back to you, Dr. Ross, and I'd like for you to maybe talk about this skills training piece. That's something that's been a thread that's come across everyone here, is that for young people to access the opportunity, they need to be educated and trained. And your program is really based in that kind of education and training. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how your education process works, what kind of incentives, that motivation question, how do you see that one being handled in the work that you're doing?
Sure. All right. Thanks very much. So we are focusing on professional training of healthcare professionals who can work in a district hospital. So basically, if you can get a place and you can get through, then you are pretty much guaranteed of getting a permanent, well-paid job. And so there's a huge incentive for people to succeed. The challenges are often that their schooling has been poor. And so we have a mentorship program. So once people get selected into a health training program and that we agree to fund them, then we have a mentorship program just to really continue to link with them as they go along. And we really want to know, we start off with the premises that you're a good student. You're a good student. You've had trouble at school, and yet you've still got a place, so you're a good student. If you fail a test, a first test, you need to interrogate that, and we want you to interrogate that, and we want to hear some of that process. Kind of, why did you fail? What were the problems? If you, for instance, had 100 multiple choice questions and you answered them all, you might have got 60 right and 40 wrong. So that's a question of strategy. You've got to know, answer 60 that you know and don't answer the rest. If you've maybe spent all the time on questions 1 and 2 and not got to the end of the paper, that's again a question of utilizing your time. Or you haven't learned properly. So there's a variety of reasons why people might have failed. But we really want people to say, okay, if you fail a particular test early on, there are resources available within the university to help you, and that you need to access those, not because you're a bad failing student, but in fact because you're a good student who is determined to actually succeed. And that the guy who's doing the mentorship at the moment is a guy called Dunsani Gumedi, who's a graduate from Ingwavuma, and that he says to the guys, you're good students, you're going to struggle at university, but I expect you to be getting 65%. I don't want 50.5, I want 65. So he sets the bar quite high. He says to the guys, they're resources, and you've learned how to cope. You struggled without a maths teacher at your school, and yet you got together with your friends, you found another maths teacher who could give a bit of input, and you managed to get a matric result. Now, if you've managed that in the context where you came from, when you get to university, don't shrivel away and think, I've got to work and not tell anybody. Actually, if you've got a problem, acknowledge the problem, and then together with others, look for solutions. And often at university, they've got people who can help you. And so that's really been what we focused on. You good students, you will struggle if your schooling has not been good, but because you're good students, you can find solutions. And we want to see you looking for those solutions and succeeding. And that we've been amazed. About 94% of our students have progressed every year. You know, when we started, people said no one will pass, everyone will fail, you know, universities are tough. And yet that's not been our experience. People have struggled, but that you set a high standard, you provide support and encouragement to look for solutions. We've really been amazed.
Great. That's really inspiring. I mean, if Dr. Joyce, you could just mute your microphone. Thanks. So I just want to recap some of the points that you've made there, because I think they're really insightful. The first thing you talked about is that building resilience in some of the folks that are coming through your program. I think that's something that's often missed in the training programs, is that, if we give them just the skills, the hard skills, the technical skills, the medical skills, that's going to be enough to get them through. At Ashoka, we really believe that there are certain internal, kind of human skills, interpersonal skills that are also required to achieve. So you talked about this resilience piece. We also at Ashoka talk about empathy and leadership, that there's more required than just a technical skill to achieve in the workplace. And I think that's true all over the world. So I think that's and you talked about the support systems that you've created. I know of another Ashoka fellow that runs a similar system in South Africa for high school, getting into college, and if you're a high school student and then you've gotten to college through this program, then you mentor the high school students. So I think having support system is just so important for this kind of skills training piece that we've talked about. And the last one, in terms of incentive, which you've mentioned, which I just would want to highlight, is that guaranteeing employment at the end of a training program is a huge incentive for anyone out there who's trying to start up an employment project. I would say that's huge. If you can first work with, instead of doing the skills training first, sort of work with the companies and the hirers first, so that they know what the demand is, and you have a relationship with them, and then going to this kind of skills and training process. This can create a positive feedback loop. So that's the last point. So a lot of good stuff in there. Thank you, Dr. Ross. So now that we've talked about the challenge, I want to get to the opportunities. I'm going to get to the technology one in a minute, but I want to start first by talking about an alternative wellness job creation opportunity that's been brought to us by Paige and Catherine. I'm wondering if you two, Paige and Catherine, could talk to us about how you're growing the industry, how you're kind of trying to leverage this opportunity for yoga and alternative health in Kenya.
Thank you. So coming from a Western background, so I'm originally from New York City, being a yoga teacher, I mean, when I talk about opportunity, I think about the West and how flourishing the opportunity is there for alternative
So, Catherine, we're having a little bit of connectivity issue with you. So Catherine.
And coming and moving to as that view. So how we're
So Catherine was having a little bit of a connection issue. So on that technology question, maybe we'll move to that and we'll see if we can bring Catherine back to a better connection, and we can come back with this alternative wellness question. So I'm going to then move over to Dr. Mocha here. I think this is a nice lead-in terms of technology. If you could speak to the technology opportunity, I think that from my perspective, there's a challenge, I would say, of getting fixated on the technology, of seeing a shiny object and thinking, oh, this is amazing innovation, this is going to be a savior, this is going to do this, this is going to do that. Maybe you can talk to us about sustainability in technology. What do you think it takes for someone who's looking to start up something in their future, maybe to join up a startup around health and wellness, around technology? Maybe you could talk to some of the things that they should be looking for in terms of scaling, sustainability, and technology in the health and wellness and employment space. And you need to just take yourself off mute, Doctor. There you go.
So thank you. That's a heavy topic, but I'm going to address it in three ways. First and foremost, I'd say that there is a little bit of hype about technology, and if you will, sort of a proliferation of technology for technology's sake. And if you go down that road, there is no, it's a lost cause. So it just doesn't work. What technology in this market at least requires is for us to have a very fundamental understanding of what are the important needs, or what's the purpose you're trying to solve. It starts with a very clear purpose. And so the technologies that we're seeing thrive and become scalable are ones that are addressing the fundamental needs of this market. You have M-Kopa, which is providing energy in the last mile, and basically they're using mobile technology to light up houses with 50 shillings a day. Why? Because the way in which energy was procured was completely out of sync with how the mass market works. So these guys came up with an innovation that addresses a need, the inability for people to pay for electricity lump sum every 30 days. And they made it an opportunity for people to pay for technology on a daily basis. Another example is Bridges International. They are doing very well in this market. They're able to provide education using tablets at, again, less than 25 cents a day. And I've seen business models in India whereby mothers are able to pay their school fees at $1 per day in exchange for a daily report card. Basically showing that these technologies have understood what their customer wants, they understand the value of what they are trying to do to their customer base, and it makes them sustainable. They are I'd say, relatively simple technologies on the grand scheme of things, but they were so well designed, so robust, that the market embraced them. Now, on the flip side, would see a lot of technologies for technology's sake. And if you go down that road, in my mind, you are faced with a lot of challenges. Now, the second theme I wanted to bring up is the fact that in the African market, technology is being treated like a brick and mortar business. What do I mean? Typically, you'd have, when you're presenting to investors and to NGOs and to stuff like that, they're asking you for grants. Basically, do two things. If you're presenting to investors, sort of show me proof of traction, get one customer, then maybe get two customers, and so on and so forth. What that creates is basically your overhead takes you out of business. Whereas if you compare with technology in Silicon Valley, if you have an idea, people put money behind an idea, and there's a saying that no amount of money or a lot of money could make many ideas in the technology space look good. And so we need to get out of the mindset of technology being treated as a brick and mortar business and say technology should be game changing. And if the idea sounds scalable, put money behind it early on and let it scale, as opposed to wait for it to scale before you put money behind it, which is what happens with brick and mortar operations. Two. And then secondly, I'd say that what we want to achieve in terms of technology is to basically democratize the way technology is used. And so one of the things that youth or a lot of new companies are failing in this market to do right is that they are using business models from Western markets that are highly capitalized and trying to reproduce or to use those business models to penetrate the market. Let me explain, for example. If, let's say you had a software like in my space, a lot of my competition provides EMR services. And so you'd go to a rural hospital and you want to provide that EMR service for $3,000. Now, that's an EMR system compared to the to an EMR system in the United States. That is $300,000 for maybe a basic EMR system. So I'd say $3,000 is a fair bargain. But when you put $3,000 in front of a rural clinic that could use that technology and they say no, basically a job has just been killed. And so we are saying that, can we restructure our pricing models, our business models, whereby we are not trying to centralize the purchasing power of the market as the licensing model would do, and decentralize it such that the purchasing power meets the market dynamics on the ground. And so I'd say right now we should look at technology and business of a continuum of innovation, without which we would default into models that pretty much prevent technologies from taking root and from creating jobs for youth, especially down the last mile. Case in point, the last example I'll give is that in the healthcare sector, we're looking at the distribution channels of drugs. The industry, the drug industry, say in Kenya, in East Africa alone, is $3 billion industry. But how is that till this day? Only 34% of clinics have access to drugs, just because the supply chain is so constrained that everybody that could add value, as would happen in the Coca-Cola ecosystem, has been removed from the equation. So we really need to rethink business model here as much as we're thinking about innovations that are solving fundamental needs of the masses. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Dr. Well, let me just recap some of these really interesting points that you first, in terms of tech, you can't do tech for tech's sake. Tech needs to address a need, a fundamental need, and as well, I think you brought up an interesting point here where there was a technology company that it wasn't about the technology, but it was about their finance model that made the innovation sustainable and scalable, which is that there was a lighting need, and it wasn't a question of great solar lighting technology, but a question of how do we finance it so people can afford it. I've heard that a lot. It's not just the tech, it's the business model behind it. You also kind of mentioned some human-centered design principles that I heard you talking about, which is when you're designing the technology, does it meet the human need? Is it designed to the user in their context? interesting when you talked about Western models. You said there's one thing that we do want to import for Africa and one that we should be very conscious of. In terms of what we should look to import is the impact investment model of Silicon Valley, that instead of seeing in Africa technology as a traditional brick and mortar space, it should be looked at more of how Silicon Valley invests in ideas, sometimes even before they've gotten X or Y number of customers. What you said for us to be careful of is importing technology and technology pricing models, for example, into from West into Africa. That's something to be careful of. I've seen that a lot also in policy. I've seen folks want to bring in, say, cybersecurity or keeping young people safe online policies from the West, import them and say, well, this is the policy from Europe, we should just use it here. And that is just, that import is different. It needs to be known as a different context, a really different environment. So those are all some great points. I'm going to continue this conversation with Alan in just a second, but just want to let you know we have about 20 minutes left, so if you have questions, please keep tweeting them in. Tweet your comments, hashtag Africa Future Forward. So now that Dr. Mocha has really given us a great, I think, a bird's eye view, I'd like to get someone now who's in the trenches right now fighting the technology, sustainability, scalability questions. So Alan, maybe you can tell us about with your particular project. Tell us a little bit about how the technology is playing the role. How are you thinking about scaling and sustaining what you've been working on?
Okay, thank you so much. So we are working in mobile health, trying to get health information into the hands of pregnant women and mothers. And also right now we're looking at solutions of how to get pregnant women and mothers to hospitals when they need it. So actually scalability has, actually sustainability first and having a good business model that rents is sustainable was a very, very key question. And what we noticed was our model to actually be sustainable is to partner with NGOs already in the field of maternal infant health that actually pay for the technology so that the pregnant women and mothers can receive it for free. So that has been our focus right now. But when it comes to innovation in such areas, we've noticed that it is key for local solutions to be at the forefront. Especially right now where we're talking about the sustainable development goals, we're talking about post 2015. We believe that it is key that we have local solutions in place in order to have sustainable impact. We started working with some NGOs here in Cameroon who were implementing M-Health solutions, and we noticed that the solutions that they were, just to follow Dr. Moka's point, the solutions that they were importing in order to impact local communities here were crazily expensive. And the cycle, and you see that when they even raise funds for it, the funds cannot be able to scale, to actually create the desired impact. So right now we're trying to replace the technologies that these NGOs are using with local solutions. Also, our plan to scale is very interesting because right now, we're currently working with about 3,000 pregnant women and mothers in Cameroon in over 18 communities. And we have noticed that with sending them notifications, antenatal care notifications, we have been able to actually increase the rate of women coming to hospitals in the 18 hospitals we're working with by averagely 20%. It has been very encouraging now that we have other NGOs coming in to replicate what we are doing in their different communities and paying to use our technology. So we're offering it now like a wide level solution. Also, one other opportunity that we noticed was the problem of data collection. It's a huge problem because right now what happens is in health facilities, for example, for at the national level, for you to know the amount of babies that have been born in a certain health facility, it might take you a couple of months and a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But right now we're trying to implement a data collection system where community workers at the rural area can just update a platform, sending us the number of the required statistics that we're out to measure, the number of births, the number of drugs available, the number of vaccines available, the number of children that have been completely vaccinated in their health communities. And actually implementing this solution for us is actually going to transform and the paper data collection solution, which is actually cumbersome and also very archaic. So that's what we're looking into now. Scaling for us is actually just partnering with strategic NGOs to scale into other areas into the country. Then also when we met, we were fortunate enough to meet the Queen on the 22nd of June at the Buckingham Palace, and during that period we launched that our solutions we target over 5 million subscribers, users, in the next 2 years. So actually, in order to reach actually the 5 million, we are thinking of partnering with NGOs not just in Cameroon, but in other parts of the continent, who want to implement mobile health technologies in their areas. So and to do that, you can just go onto our website. It's www.giftedmom.org, and you can actually find a lot of information there.
That was a good, thanks. And that was a great plug at the end there, and I'm going to recap it for you. The first thing you talked about was partnerships, and that's something that I've seen when you're getting started and you're still small. Partnerships are key. In our social entrepreneurship and health course that we offer, we see that some of the greatest partnerships are some of these social entrepreneurs like yourself, who are innovating and trying many new things on the ground, and some of the large corporate health companies who are looking for new ideas. And I think that partnership between social entrepreneurs and large organizations can be a fruitful one, because the large organizations have the resources and the network to scale, and the innovators on the ground have the ideas. So I think partnership is key. You also mentioned local solutions, localized solutions for technology to work. I was recently talking to a medical doctor in Uganda, and he said, Joe, he said, we're not trained on JavaScript and Bluetooth. If someone comes in and says this is a great solution that uses Bluetooth, we spend our years learning, but that's, it doesn't move as fast. So I think localized solutions and really speaking with those who are going to use it and keeping it human-centered is key. The last piece that Alan, you mentioned, which is huge, is that for something to scale and sustain, you need evidence of how it's working. I found that's a huge piece, that if you want to get another round of investments, if you want to get that big grant, you have to have the data and the evidence, and that data collection is a challenge. And I think there's actually opportunity out there for groups that are doing great data collection and have data collection tools to work also in the health and innovation space. So I think you've brought some great points there. And I think now that Catherine and Paige are back, maybe we can come back around to that wellness question. So, Catherine, and Paige, why don't you try unmuting yourself and seeing how our network's doing over there?
Okay, I obviously need to get the network that Mocha has, because he's coming in a lot clearer than us, and we're both in Nairobi. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound great. So again, the question is about your perspective of the growth of the wellness industry and how you're harnessing that. What does it maybe the future look like for Africa in the wellness industry? Yeah,
thank you. So one of the biggest challenges of Africa in the next 50 years will be addressing chronic disease. So not looking so much at infectious disease. Malaria, HIV, but looking at high blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, the diseases of the West. And as the diseases of the West come to Africa, what the doctor tells us is, eat better and exercise. And so we feel the wellness value chain, being able to get well-being, great nutritional advice and accessible, low-cost exercise into the hands of people from all different socioeconomic backgrounds is going to be vital, both a great opportunity for our health, but also for the wealth of young people who can be trained in how to teach yoga. We personally are really excited about yoga, because as much as it's so exciting for us to see all the progress in technology, Africa is a continent that I'm so touched by the human connection of community, people relating to each other and speaking and being together, and the time to take off to put down our technology and take time in our lives to exercise, to breathe, to deal with the different stresses that technology brings us is a huge opportunity for us all to live more peaceful and healthy lives.
Excellent, thanks for that. So let me some of the things that you've mentioned there. One is chronic disease, and I think that's something I've been also hearing from some of my contacts in the medical industry, is that diabetes is a growing issue, and that there's some of these chronic diseases that that are going to, as this employment grows, as the economy grows of Africa, which I believe it will, that there are new kind of health issues that are going to rise: obesity, chronic disease, diabetes, these things, and that's a huge opportunity for people who are working in alternative wellness, especially something like yoga. You talked about, I think, also the human connection of some of this alternative wellness stuff, of going to a yoga class, disconnecting from the computers and from the internet, which it offers this great opportunity to work anywhere in the world, but also work all the time. I know that we've also had some interesting projects around meditation, about how meditation as well could be used to kind of bring that balance. So thanks Paige for bringing in that perspective. We do have a question from Twitter, which I'm going to bring in now. It's from @Mighty Racing. Thank you for your question, and I'm going to target this question at Dr. Ross. Dr. Ross, the question from @Mighty Racing is about how can we incentivize trained young people to stay and serve their own communities. If there's this call for the medical professionals and there's a need in other countries and this opportunity for them to leave and perhaps get a better quality of living in their perspective, what can we do to keep trained young Africans working with their population?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. It is a very important question and a key issue. I think a couple of things are important. We're really building our program around this is about providing health care to your neighbor and the person across the road. Okay, so that's the emphasis of the program. We do it through training, so it provides training opportunities, but it's about providing a service. We make it clear from the beginning that this is a commitment that you're making, and that you're making that commitment of your own free will, and that we want you to come back really for 3 reasons. We want you to come back because there's a need for a healthcare service within that community. We want you to come back, and we talk about this often, so it's not just when you get selected. We talk about it when you get selected, and when Dumisani visits you, and we have an annual Imbizo where we talk about it again. So we talk about it on an ongoing basis. So we want you to come back because there's a need to run a service and provide a service, and that in rural areas, if you're poor, you have to accept whatever's there. If the sister's drunk or not there, you don't have a choice. Whereas for me in town, I've got a medical aid. I can go to St. Aidan's or Interbeni or anywhere else. I have a whole lot more choices. So it's about providing a service. That's one. The second thing, we think it's an issue of integrity. Here we are offering you an opportunity for training, and so we're asking you to honor that obligation because you said you would. You are honoring that obligation also because it provides opportunities for others as well. That we raise money on the basis of things that we're saying that you will do. So we say to corporates, support this because we'll have young people who will commit to coming back. And that it's like if everyone failed, then next year we wouldn't get money. If no one comes back, then next year we won't get money. So you have an obligation you had training opportunities. So we're asking you not forever, but for each year that you needed financial support to commit to coming back. And then in fact we have a contract that people sign, and that we say to people, look, we understand that life circumstances change. If you choose not to come back, then you need to pay back the money. So, it doesn't answer all of the questions, and it is a challenge, and I think that people do want training opportunities. We acknowledge that, but we're asking for each year that you had this opportunity, we're asking you to commit to coming back. And again, we've been really, really pleased that it's not something that we introduce once and never talk about it again. We talk about it often. We talk about some of the challenges. We're asking graduates also to be saying to new graduates, this is what we've gone through. We think that it's important that if this is to be sustainable, then you have to play a role as well. And that people have come back, people have worked, people have bought themselves out, but it's only about 8 or 10% of people who have bought themselves out. And there's only one person that I can think of who said, I'm not coming back and I'm not going to pay you back. And then we're saying, well, then there's a legal process. But we don't really want people's money. We would much rather that they come back and work for many reasons.
Great, thanks, Dr. So that was great. I'm going to continue the questions since we have limited time left. This next question comes from David Strelnick, and it's going to be targeted to Dr. Mocha. Dr. Mocha, you talked about employing quite a number of young people. You've mentioned millennials, and the question from David, and thank you, David, for your question, are what are some of the opportunities in the health and wellness sector that you think are specifically primed for the skills and attitudes of a fresh minds and of young people. So if you're a young person and you're listening to this and you're wondering what might I have a comparative advantage, what might I be, something that I'm going to excel at? So the question from David for you, Dr. Mocha, is one more time: is what are the specific, opportunities that you think really fit with the millennials and some of the young people that are entering the employment market?
Great, I'd be remiss to say that I have a heavy bias towards the health sector. But if I use the health sector as a very critical component of every community, and you could draw the same conclusions with education or with the hospitality industry, I see a lot of opportunity for youth to add value using technology, or even just thinking about the service models, that the different kinds of service models that could be quite lucrative. I'm going to use one example within the Ashoka network. I think one of the Forward Future fellows, Jonathan Mativo, he started a program, ICT for development, and he trains youth on how to use any electronic gadget. And one of the youth in his cohort learned how to use a digital camera and started a business in his village documenting land titles, death certificates, birth certificates, just with the camera. And now he's a very reliable service provider. He has so much work that one can't even think of. Now, he basically found that archiving of papers in the rural area is a very, very challenging task. Now, if you start drawing similar parallels in other areas, one of the things I'd say in education is that we have an education system whereby report cards are sent every month. And so basically, the value for money in education is grossly underappreciated. And people don't even know why education matters, besides the fact that, well, everybody says go to school, and you go to school. Whereas, one of the models that I saw in India, which is so transformational, is that somebody developed an app, and people are even using Facebook to be able to tweet about the performance of their children in school on a daily basis in exchange for a service as little as 25 shillings, or the equivalent of 25 cents a day. In the health sector, I see the opportunity for technology to just enormous. I see opportunity around, for employment everywhere. First and foremost, we are looking, for example, ZD. We provide our EMR solution as a full service package. So we do installation of hardware, the software, the local area network, and now we're in partnership with the local connectivity provider, where we also provide connectivity. So now, for us to bring up a clinic, we need somebody who knows how to install computers, set up a local area network, and also set up connectivity. And we have realized that that is the most critical task we have to accomplish, be able to execute that on schedule and on time. So we're willing to employ youth, and in exchange for our fee, which is 50 shillings per patient, we are able to give them 4 cents for every patient that is seen if they are able to maintain a 95% uptime. So we have created a model whereby the youth now are the ones driving our business. They are the face of our business. They provide technical support, they provide sales support, and there are 4,000 clinics out there. So technically, each clinic out there is a potential job for youth. Now, we look if you expand the pie to other forms of opportunities in the healthcare sector, we're seeing more devices and equipment getting into the medical space. Who is going to maintain those equipment? So really what we want is creative youth who can reverse engineer some of this equipment and make it work in that space. We are seeing lots of disruptive technologies coming to the market space, colposcopes based on iPhones, retinal exams based on iPhones. We just need people out there who can charge iPhones or who can refurbish iPhones. So again, I'm very optimistic about the opportunities that either health, education, or energy present for youth to be self-employed in the last mile. They just need to be able to really think about it, and then and then go for the opportunity. And I think the rest will be history.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Moko. We're just at time here. This hour has flown by, but I want to give the last word to our young person, to our young entrepreneur. Alan, can you tell us what advice would you give to someone who's maybe sitting, listening to this, or is working with this community? What advice would you give them in terms of how can they, kind of take innovation, take technology, take the alternative health opportunities out there? What advice would you give to your fellow young people in terms of if they're just starting out in their careers and they're looking ahead?
Yeah, it's an honor to have the last floor. So actually, I said this before last year, and it's actually the same thing I'm going to say as advice to young people wanting to start something. And this is the thing. So there are many challenges across the continent. There are many challenges, especially in social entrepreneurship. There are many players. There are many factors you have to put together in order to be able to create impact and solve a problem. But the important advice that applies to us is just to get started. If you think about the challenges, you might find yourself not even starting. So, but when you get started, you find each day, you find the challenges, you find the solution to each challenge as it comes. So for me, it's just one word: just get started, get going, and as the days get going, you're going to find an easier and easier way of making it happen. You're going to find great partnerships that are going to actually pave the way for you, and that's it for now. Just get started.
Yeah, first step is always the hardest. So I think it's a great way to end the session. I want to thank everyone who's joined us today: Dr. Andrew Ross, Dr. Mocha Lanterm, Catherine Njiri, and Paige Ellison. And thank you, Alan, for joining us again. Everyone, please follow up. Changemakers Future Forward. There's the two online professional development courses which we're offering with a mix of young people and professionals together. So you'll see information about that as well coming out from Twitter. So again, thank you to our whole panel. Thank you everyone who've joined us today. And I'll hope that you all will join us for the next Future Forward webinar. So thank you again, and take care everyone. Have a wonderful morning, day, or evening, depending on where you are.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Great job.
Thanks very much.
Thank you too.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Bye. Thank you.
And everyone. Yeah.